Everyone, welcome back to our Python programming course. This is the lecture number 6, and in today's lecture we are going to learn conditional statements in Python. So far in the course we have learned about variables, data types, operators, how to take input, output, typecasting, escape sequence and formatted output. Now it's time to use all those concepts to make our program smart enough to take decisions. Think about real life situations. If it is raining, we carry an umbrella. If our exam marks are greater than or equal to 40, we pass the exam. If we know the correct password, we are allowed to log in. These are some examples. Every day, we make decisions based on certain conditions. Similarly, a computer program also needs to make decisions while solving problems. In Python, we use conditional statements for this purpose. In this lecture, we will learn about how to use the if, else, and elif statements. So, we will understand how a program checks a condition, decides whether it is true or false, and then executes the appropriate block of code. By the end of this lecture, you will be able to write programs and make decisions automatically based on user input or different conditions. So without wasting any more time, let's move on to our next slide. So we will begin with a small recap of the previous lecture. Before we begin today's topic, let's quickly revise what we learned in lecture 5. In the previous lecture, we learned about input and output in Python, which allow a program to interact with the user. First, we learned about the print function. The print function is used to display output on the screen. We used it to print text, numbers, variables, and multiple values. Next, we studied the input function. So what's input function? The input function is used to take input from the user. It allows our program to become interactive because different users can provide different values. After that, we learned about typecasting. Typecasting is the process of converting one data type into another. We used functions like int, float, and str to perform these conversions. So we will understood why typecasting is needed. Since the input functions always return data as a string, we use functions like int or float. Whenever we want to perform mathematical calculations on user input, then we discuss escape sequences. Escape sequences are special character combinations such as \n, \t, and many more, which helps us format our output and make it more readable. Finally, we learned about formatted output, also known as f-strings. Using f-strings, we can easily insert variables or expression inside a string by writing them inside curly braces. This makes our code cleaner, easier to read, and more professional. So these were the key concepts from our previous lecture. Now that we have refreshed our memory, let's move on to today's topic and learn how Python can make decision using conditional statement as if, else, elif. Now let's understand the main topic of today's lecture. What are conditional statements? So conditional statements are used to make decisions in a Python program. Instead of executing every line of code one after another, a program can first check whether a condition is true or the condition is false. Based on the result, it decides which block of code should be executed. Think about a simple and real-life example. Suppose you are eligible to vote only if your age is 18 years or above. If your age is less than 18, you are not allowed to vote. So the decision depends on a condition. The same idea is used in programming. Conditional statements help the program choose what to do next. This is why we call the building blocks or decision making in programming. Now let's understand the example given here. As you can see that in the example, the first line is age equal to 18 and here the condition starts. If age is greater than equal to 18, print eligible to vote. In the first line, we create a variable called age and assign the value 18. In the second line, we use a conditional statement if. It asks Python to check whether the condition age is greater than or equal to 18 is true or not. This symbol is greater than equal to. Since the value of age is 18, the condition becomes 18 is greater than or equal to 18, which is true. Because the condition is true, Python executes the indented line, indented line below this line. Python will print this line and the output will become eligible to vote. Now imagine the value is different. Imagine the value will here be 15, not 18, the value will be 15. Then the condition became false. Since the condition became false, the print statement would not execute and nothing would be displayed. This is how conditional statements make decisions. They first check a condition whether it is true or not and then execute code only when the condition is true. Because of condition statement, we can create much smarter programs. For example, we can check whether a student has passed or failed in his or her exam. We can verify if a password is correct or not. We can decide whether a person is eligible to vote. We can check if a number is positive or negative. These kinds of decisions are used in almost every real-world application. So remember this simple definition. Conditional statement helps a program make decision by checking whether a condition is true or false. Now that we understand the basic idea of conditional statement, let's start with our next slide. Hope this slide is clear to you. Now moving on to our next slide. Now let's learn the first and most important condition statement in Python, which is the if statement. So what is the if statement? The if statement is the simplest form of a conditional statement. Its job is very simple. It's check whether a condition is true or not. If the condition is true, Python executes the block of code inside the if statement. If the condition is false, Python skips that block and continues with the rest of the program. Let's first understand its syntax. So this is the basic syntax. Notice two important things here. First, after the condition, we write a colon. Second, the code inside the if statement is written with indentation, which usually mean 4 spaces. Indentation tells Python that this code belongs to the if block. Without proper indentation, Python will generate an indentation error. Now let's understand the example. Here we create a variable named marks and assign it the value 85. Now look at the next line. If marks greater than equal to 50 and then a colon. Here Python checks the condition is 85 greater than or equal to 50. The answer is yes. So the condition is true. Because the condition is true, Python executes the indented line below it, which is this print pass. Now imagine we have changed the value. Suppose we write marks equal to 35. Suppose instead of 85 here is written 35. So the condition becomes false. Since the condition is false, Python does not execute the print pass statement. It simply skips the block and moves to the next line of the program. This is the most important thing to remember about the if statement. It runs the code only when the condition is true. If the condition is false, the code inside the if block is ignored. Let's quickly revise the key points. Here are the key points you can see on the PPT. The if statement checks a condition. What's the work of if statement? The if statement checks a condition. Now, if the condition is true, the indented block of code runs. If the condition is false, the block is skipped. Always remember to use proper indentation, usually 4 spaces, because indentation is required in Python. The if statement is used in almost every real-world Python program, whether it's checking a login password, verifying exam marks, confirming a payment, or deciding if someone is eligible to vote or not. The if statement is the first step in making decisions. Now that you have understand how the if statement works when a condition is true, let's move to the next topic and learn what happens when the condition is false by using the if and else statement. Now let's learn about the if-else statement. In the previous slide, we learned about the if statement. We saw that if the condition is true, Python executes the code inside the if block. But what happens if the condition is false? This is where the else statement becomes useful. The if-else statement allows the program to choose between two different blocks of codes. If the condition is true, the code inside the if block runs. Otherwise, the code inside the else block runs. So, one of these two blocks will always be executed. Let's first understand its syntax. Notice that both the if and the else block uses indentation. You can see here a tab gap or the four space gap. Just like the if statement, indentation is mandatory in Python. Now let's understand the example shown on the slide. First we write this line is equal to 16. Here the variable age stores the value 16. Now Python checks the condition if the age is greater than equal to 18 or not. If it's 16 greater than or equal to 18, the answer is no. So the condition becomes false. Because the condition is false, Python skips the code inside that if block. Instead, it moves to the else block and this statement is executed. Because 16 is not greater than equal to 18. So the condition is false and not eligible will be the output. Suppose we write age equal to 20. Now Python checks the condition and 20 is greater than 18. So the condition will be true. So this time Python executes the if block and prints eligible to vote. The else block is completely skipped. The this part of code is completely skipped and only this will be printed. Either the if block runs on the or the else block runs, but never both at the same time. The if-else statement is very useful in real-life programs. For example, we can use it to check whether a student has passed or failed, verify whether password is correct or incorrect, check whether person is eligible to vote or not, decide if a number is even or odd. So remember the points that the if-else statement is used when there are two possible outcomes. If the condition is true, the if block runs. If the condition is false, the else block. Always use proper indentation because it is required in Python. As mentioned in the tip on this slide, always test your program with both true and false values. This helps us make sure that both the if block and else block are working correctly. Now that we have learned about how to choose between two possible outcomes, let's move to if-elif-else statement, where a program can choose between multiple conditions. Now let's learn about another very important conditional statement in Python called the if, elif, and else statement. In the previous slide, we learned about if-else statement. It is useful when there are only two possible outcomes. But in real-world programs, we often have more than two conditions to check. For example, grading students. A student get grade A, grade B, grade C, or grade D. Since there are multiple possibilities, using only if and else is not enough because they check only two conditions, true or false. This is where the elif statement becomes useful. The word elif simply means else if. It allows Python to check another condition if the previous condition was false. Let's first understand the syntax. This is the syntax. Now, you can see the syntax clearly. Python checks this condition from top to bottom. As soon as it finds the first condition that is true, it executes the block of code and steps checking the remaining condition. Now let's understand the example shown here on the slide. First, we write marks equal to 72. Here the variable marks stored the value 72. Now Python starts checking the condition one by one. The first condition is marks is greater than or equal to 90. So this condition is false and Python moves to the next condition. Now it checks marks greater than or equal to 75. So this condition is also false. Now Python checks the third condition. This time it asks marks greater than or equal to 60. Now this time this condition is true. Therefore Python executes this block and print grade C. After executing this block, Python does not check the remaining else block. After this is executed, Python will skip this code. Now imagine the marks were 95. The first condition would the Now imagine the marks will be 95. So the first condition will become true and output will be grade A, and this code is escaped by the Python. Similarly, for grade B, if the marks if the marks were greater than 75, here the grade B will be printed. This is why the order of condition is very important. Usually we write the most specific or highest priority condition first. Let's quickly revise the key points. First, use elif for only multiple conditions. Python check conditions from top to bottom. Only the first true condition is executed. The else block run only if none of the condition is true. The if-elif-else statement is commonly used in real-world programs such as grading system, menu-driven application, salary calculation, discount system, and many other decision-making problems. Here you can see that if marks were greater than equal to 90, grade will be printed A. If marks were greater than equal to 75, grade will be printed B. And you can see the whole chart. Now that we have learned about how to work with multiple conditions, let's move on to the next topic and understand nested if statement, where only if statement is placed inside another if statement. Hope this slide is clear to you. Now let's talk about another useful concept in Python called the nested if statement. The word nested means one thing placed inside another. So a nested if statement simply means an if statement inside another if, elif or else block. We use a nested if when one condition depends on another condition. In other words, we first check one condition and only if it is true, we check another condition. Let's understand the syntax first. You can see the syntax here. First read the syntax. Here, Python first checks condition 1. If condition 1 is false, Python immediately executes the outer else block. It never checks the inner if, but if condition 1 is true, then Python enters the block and checks condition 2. So, the inner if runs only when the outer if is already true. Now let's understand example. First we create a variable, the value of age is 20. Now Python checks the first condition. If age is greater than equal to 18, it asks Python, the answer will be true. So Python enters this block. Now because the first condition is true, Python checks the other. Now this condition is true, the Python will check the other condition. Is 20 greater than or equal to 21? No, this condition is false. So Python executes the inner else block. It prints, you can vote but cannot drink. You can vote but cannot drink. After printing this message, the program ends. Notice something important. The outer condition was true, but inner condition was false. That is why only the inner else block was executed. Now imagine the age was 22. The first condition would be true because 22 is greater than 18. The second condition also be true. So the Python would print this. You can vote and drink. Now imagine the age was 16. The very first condition would become false. Python would not check the inner if. If this conditions become false, Python will not check the inner if and else statement. It directly print the else statement and output will become you cannot vote. Now let's quickly see the key points. A nested if means an if statement inside another if statement. The inner if runs only if the outer if is true. Proper indentation is very important because it tells Python which block belongs to which if. Nested if statements are useful for solving complex decision-making problems. In real-life programming, nested if statements are used in situations like login systems, ATM machines, online shopping, discounts, age verification, and many other applications where one decision depends on another. Now that you have understood the nested if statement, let's move to our next topic and learn how to use multiple conditions together with logical operators in Python. Now, let's understand an important concept used in almost every Python program. That concept is comparison operators in conditions. Comparison operators are used to compare two values. Whenever we compare two values, Python gives us only one of two possible answers. The answers will be either true or false. If the comparison operator is correct, Python returns true, otherwise it returns false. Now, these statements are very important because they are commonly used inside if statements, elif statements, while loops, and many other decision-making situations. Now, let's look at each comparison operator one by one. The first operator is double equal to, written as double equal to sign. This operator checks whether two are equal or not. For example, the next operator is not equal to. I already told you about all the operators in previous section. If you want to know more about these operators, you can see the previous lecture. Now, let's understand the example. We create two variables A and B. We assign value 10 to A and value 20 to B. Now, here, now, is 10 equal to 20? No, so the output is false. Next, 10 not equal to 20? Yes, so the output is true. Similarly, 10 greater than 20? No, the output will be false. And 10 less than 20, so the output will be true. Since both values are equal, the answer is true when 10 and A is equal to B, A equal to 10 and B equal to 10. Now let's quickly look at the key points. Comparison operator always return either true or false. The result is always a Boolean value. They are most likely used inside conditions and loops to make decisions. Also remember, comparison operators are case sensitive when coming strings. Finally, here is a very important tip. Do not confuse the assignment operator with the comparison operator. The single equal sign is used to assign a value to variable, but double equal to is used only to compare two values. This is one of the most common mistakes beginners make. So always remember the difference. So in the next slide, we will learn how to combine multiple conditions together using logical operators like AND, OR, and NOT in Python. Hope this slide is clear to you. It is. I already told you about comparison operators in the previous lecture, the operators in Python. Hope this is clear to you. Moving on to the next slide. Now let's learn about logical operators in Python. Sometimes checking only one condition is not enough. In many real-world situations, we need to check two or more conditions together before making a decision. This is where logical operators are used. This is where logical operators are used. What are logical operators? They help us to combine multiple conditions into a single condition. Just like comparison operator, logical operator also return either true or false. They are commonly used with if, elif, while, and the principal statement. Python has three logical operators and, or, and not. Let's understand each of one. First is and operator. I think I also told you all about all these operators. Let's understand it. The and operator is true only when both conditions are true. If even one condition is false, the entire result becomes false. Now, next is the OR operator. The OR operator returns true if at least one condition is true. It becomes false only when both conditions are false. And the last operator is NOT operator. It reverses the result of the condition. If the condition is true, it do it false. If the condition is false, it's do it true. Now here you can see the example. Two variables are taken and value 10 is assigned to A and value 20 is assigned to B. The first statement is print A greater than 5 and B less than 25. Here Python check two conditions. Both conditions are true. Since we are using AND output, the output will be true. In the second operator, both conditions are false. A greater than 15 or B less than 15. Both are false. So the output will be false. In the next statement, here not is written. Sorry, print A greater than 15. So if you check 10 is greater than 15, So no, this is false. B less than 15, 20 less than 15. So the here it will be false. By mistaken, by mistake यहाँ पे गलती से true हो गया है, यहाँ पे false होगा. Wait a minute. Here it will be false. False. In the next statement, is 10 equal to 10? Yes, that gives true. Now the reverse. Now here it is not, so that result will be reversed. That answer will be false. Now look at the if statement. If a greater than 5 and b greater than 15, then both conditions are true. Else, break at least one condition is false. Now check, is 10 greater than 5? Yes. Is 20 greater than 15? Yes. Both conditions are true. Therefore, Python executes the if block and prints both conditions are true. Let's quickly revise these key points. The AND operator returns true only when all conditions are true. The OR operator returns true if at least one condition is true. The NOT operator simply reverses the result. Logical operators help us combine multiple conditions and make better decisions in the program. Finally, when writing long condition, you can use parentheses to make your code easier to read and understand. It improves readability and also helps avoid confusion. So, hope this slide is clear to you. In the next slide, we will do a practical program using comparison operator, logical operator, and conditional statement. Now let's talk about one of the most important rules in Python programming, and that is indentation. I already told about you indentation. Now let's learn about it in brief. Many programming languages use curly braces to define a block of code, but Python is different. Python uses indentation, which means spaces or tabs. You can see here a tab space. This is called indentation. This is called indentation. So Python uses indentation, which means spaces or tabs at the beginning of line to decide which statement belongs to which block code. With indentation, Python cannot understand the structure of code. This is why indentation is not optional in Python. It is a required part of the language. Whenever we use statements like if-elif-else, for, while, or even functions, we must indent our code inside those blocks. Now let's see why indentation is important. First, Python does not use curly braces to define blocks. Instead, indentation tells Python which line belongs to which code. Second, correct indentation shows which lines are inside a block. Third, incorrect indentation causes errors. Finally, proper indentation makes your program clean and processable. Let's look at this here. Notice something carefully. If I read if and else statement, the next line is slightly to the right. Here after the if statement, you can see there is a tab space. Here after if statement, there is a tab space. This is indentation. The small space is indentation. Because of this indentation, Python knows that which if statements will where is blocks. Since the static conditions become true, so Python prints you are an adult. Now you are an adult. The remaining conditions are skipped. Now look at the incorrect example given here. Wait a minute. This is the incorrect example. The print statements are not indented. Here you can see that. This is the incorrect example. You can see that the print statement is not indented. As a result, Python gives an indentation error. Here, Python gives an indentation error. You can also see the error message shown on the slide. It says indentation error expected as in indented block. This is one of the most common mistakes beginners make. So always check your indentation carefully. Now let's revise the key points. Indent every block inside if-elif-else. Use the same indentation style throughout your program. Python is very strict about indentation. Even one missing space can produce an error. According to the PEP8 coding guideline, the best practice is to use 4 spaces for each indentation level. Most code editors like VS Code or PyCharm automatically indent your code, which helps avoid mistakes. So always write clean and properly indented code. It not only prevents error but also makes your program much easier to read. Now that we understand indentation, let's move to the next slide and see a real life example where conditional statements are used in actual Python program. Now that we have learned about if statement, if-else statement, comparison operator, indentation, let's create a real life program using all these concepts together. In this example, we will write a program that checks whether a person is eligible to vote based on their age. It's a very basic program. In many countries, a person must be 18 years or greater than 18 years to vote. So our program will simply check the user's age and display the correct message. Let's first understand the logic. The logic is very simple. If the age is greater than or equal to 18, the person is eligible to vote. Otherwise, the person is not eligible to vote. Now let's understand the program step by step. The first line is age. Wait a minute. This is the first line. You can see here. Here we use the input functions. We use the input function to take the user input. Since input always, as I told you, since input always return a string value, we use int to convert the string into integer value. Next comes the condition if. If age is greater than equal to 18, then there is indentation, a tab space, print eligible to vote. This message tells the user that they can vote. If the condition is false, Python skips the if. Python skips this block and moves to the else statement and print that the message that the user is not eligible to vote. Now suppose the user enters 20. Python checks is 20 greater than or equal to 18, then the result will be true. So Python will print eligible to vote, and after that code, all the else code is skipped. Now take another example where the age is 16. If the age is 16, Python checks is 16 greater than 18, so the output will be no. So then, so Python tells that age is not greater than 18, so it will be false, and the output will be not eligible. This is a very simple example, but it shows how computers make decisions using conditions. Programs don't think like human. They are simply check whether a condition is true or false and then execute the corresponding block of code. This same concept is used in many real-world applications. For example, checking whether a student has passed or failed, checking if a customer gets a discount or not, verifying whether a user can access a particular feature. All these programs uses the same decision-making concept that we learned today. So the key takeaway from this example is that conditional statement help us make decision in Python just like we make decision in real life. The if and else statement are simple, but they are among the most powerful and frequently used concepts in the programming. Now that we have understood a real life example, now let's move to the next slide and solve a practice program to strengthen our understanding. Now it's time to practice what we have learned in this lecture. In the program, we will check whether a student has passed or failed based on their marks. This is another real-life example of using the if-else statement. Let's make understand the logic. In most exams, a student needs 50 marks or more to pass. So our program will check whether the centered marks are greater than or equal to 50. If the program will If they are, the program will print pass, otherwise it will print fail. Now let's understand the code step by step. The first line is marks equal to int input enter marks. Here we use the input functions to take marks from the user. Since input returns a string, we convert it into an integer using int. Now the value is stored in the variable called marks. Next comes the condition if marks greater than equal to 50. Python checks whether the marks entered are greater than or equal to 50. If the condition is true, Python executes the next line pass. If the condition is false, the Python moves to the next block of code on the else block and it will print fail. Now let's look at the sample outputs. If the marks entered is 65, Python checks 65 is greater than or equal to 50 or not. Since 65 is greater than 50, the Python automatically could give the output pass. If the in the second example, if the marks entered is 38, then Python checks whether 38 is greater than or equal to 50 or not. So it is false. The Python executes the else block and prints fail. This is a very common type of program that beginners create while learning Python. The same idea can be used in many other situations. For example, I have given you examples in the previous slide. Like some other examples are checking if someone is eligible for a scholarship or not, determining whether a product gets discount or not. These programs use the same if-else decision-making concept. The key takeaway from this practice program is that more you practice, the stronger your programming logic becomes. The changing the marks to different values like 50, 49, 80, 25, observe how the output change. This simply practices will help you understand conditional statements much better. Now let's move on to our next slide. Hope this is clear to you. Now it's time for a quick quiz. These questions will help you check how much you have understood about conditional statement. Try to answer each questions on your own before looking at the answer. So, which statement did you make decision? Take a minute, think about it. If you have watched the video without seeing the answer, the correct answer is the if statement. The if statement checks a condition. If condition is true, the code inside if blocks runs. Otherwise, Python skips the block of code. Second question is, what is difference between if and if else? This is an important question. An if statement executes a block of code only when the condition is true. If the condition is false, nothing happens. And in if else statement, always choose one of two blocks. If condition is true, if block run. If condition is false, else block run. So if else is useful when you want to handle both possible situations. Now coming to the third question, when is elif used? So the answer is we use elif when we need to check multiple conditions. Python checks the condition one by one from top to bottom. As soon as one condition becomes true, Python executes the block and skips the remaining conditions. Last question, what happens if condition is false and there is no else block? The answer is very simple. If the condition is false and there is no else block, Python simply skips the if block and continues executing the next line of code. No error occurs. The program just moves forward. Now let's look at the quick tips on the right side. Here you can see the quick tips. The last one is not visible due to my face cam. I will tell you all. Always use if and if-elif-else. Always use if-elif-else whenever your program needs to make decision. Remember, the indentation is very important in Python. Without proper indentation, the program produces an indentation error. Also test your progress with different inputs. Always test your condition with different input. The more conditional program you write, the better your logical thinking and problem solving skills will become. Now you have successfully completed the quiz. Now let's move to our final slide. Hope this slide is clear to you. So thank you everyone for watching the chat. Congratulations on completing the chapter. Today we learned one of the most important concepts in programming, how to make decision using conditional statement. We started by understanding what conditional statements are and why they are needed. Then we learned if-else. We also discussed nested if, then we discussed comparison and logical operators in conditions. And then we discuss about indentation. Finally, we solved some example which I hope you know understand how Python can make decisions based on different conditions. Remember, programming is not just about writing code, it is about solving problem using logic. So keep practicing different examples like checking voting eligibility, which we done today, grading system, age verification, and many more. The more programs you write, the stronger your programming skills will become. If you enjoyed this lecture, continue practicing before moving to the next one. In the next lecture, we will learn another important Python topic and continue building our programming journey step by step. Thank you for learning Python with me. Keep practicing, keep learning. See you in the next Python lecture. If I have done some mistake, I am sorry. Thank you.